streaming through our website, ESPN1073.com. Live stream ability there anywhere that you have access. We do the show in a podcast form, so we do it live every Monday from 5 to 6, and then you can go back on our website and go to our show page and archive that as a podcast at any time. Go back to listen to previous episodes. We had Chris on there today and also a couple of weeks ago as we were talking about the Cardinals for spring training, and we cover everything from Cardinals, Blues, sometimes Mizzou if there's something to talk about there, the Chiefs when they're playing, of course, local action that we have going on as well. So we cover a wide range of topics, a little bit for everybody.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've checked out your show a couple times. I like what you're doing over there. It sounds good, and I'm going to keep checking it out because, number one, I'm still a big Missouri sports fan, even though I live in Arizona, but I got to get my fill somewhere, and Chris turned me on to you, and you guys are doing a great job so far.
I appreciate it.
And next, we will go to our good friend from STL SportsCentral, Mr. Hayden See.
So, STL SportsCentral, we cover the Cardinals, the Blues, and the Battlehawks and STL FC when they come to St. Louis. We're on every social media at STL SportsCentral, and we're coming up on our 5-year anniversary because I started the account in 8th grade, and it's crazy to see how far it's grown. So I appreciate all the
support. You get an impressive following. Yeah, you get an impressive following.
I appreciate it. It's a lot of hard work.
Yeah. Chris doesn't do anything. I don't know if you guys know this or not. I got to do all the work. He just basically lays around. I think he's got 3 people to join the page and stuff. It's a nightmare dealing with him, but he started it, so, whatever. So
yeah, I'll take the credit,
Now, Chris puts in a ton of time and effort. The rest of us are just along for the ride here. Everyone's like, oh, I was like, yeah, shortly after Chris started, he messaged me and I jumped on with him. They were like, from the beginning? I'm like, yeah, from the beginning. I invited my close friends and family, and as far as I got. So we got some people checking us out, following us right now currently. I can see your live chat messages, so if you have any questions that you would like us to ask or run through, please send them through the chat on YouTube, and we'll do our best to get it out to our panel of experts here. That's what I'm going to call us because it makes it sound official and like we're super smart. So, Chris, my good friend, I'll let you lead us off and take us into the show.
Well, I'll go around the horn here, kind of in the order of the introduction, and start with you, Brad, but the rest of you can follow suit. Your thoughts on the Cardinals offseason moves. I know heading into the offseason, some of us were not as optimistic, not thinking we'd be going and making too many moves. And when the Cardinals did go out and re-sign Wainwright, the big trade of Arenado, Yachty coming back on a 1-year deal, letting Wong walk, what are you guys' thoughts on the offseason moves and how that, leading in, led up to your either excitement or kind of disappointment and how the roster is kind of shaking up heading into the season?
Yeah, with the whole COVID season last year, and then Mosaic, he was pretty vocal about the whole money issue. So I really wasn't quite sure what to expect this offseason. Obviously I wanted Waino back. I wanted Yachty back. Sad to see Colton Wong go, but I understand in a normal season, his option probably would have been picked up. But good luck to him in Milwaukee. That Nolan Arenado trade, though, that I was so pumped about that when I heard that. First off, we were just talking about it, and then when it finally came official, we definitely needed a big bat, and Nolan definitely fits that. So it definitely in matter of a week, it went from a snoozer of an off season to one of the best off seasons.
Yeah. JP, what are your thoughts? I know we kind of talked about, we'd heard about Arenado coming for the last couple seasons.
Yep.
And, then boom, it kind of took steam and happened pretty quick. So what are your thoughts?
A lot of what Brad said, and we talked about this earlier on the show, Chris, that we had is I wasn't excited. And I've been a Cardinals fan my entire life, literally my entire life. My dream job was to be an announcer for the Cardinals. I wanted to be in the Cardinals booth. So I have followed them very closely since I can remember. And I was just, they weren't doing anything. And I thought, if this is how we're going to do it, I mean, I know the Cubs haven't made moves. The Brewers to that point hadn't done a whole lot. I said, we might win the Central by default. That's about it. We're not set up to make any kind of postseason run. And I know in the postseason, you just get in and things can happen, but I wasn't feeling it. And then the Nolan Arenado news started coming out again. I thought, here we go. Once again, we're going to, they're going to get us all excited for nothing. But then it seemed like there was a shift, and all of a sudden I can't really explain it, but there was this sense of optimism of, I get the feeling they're going to get something done this time. And when that news became official, it's weird because baseball typically is not a sport where one player can make a difference that big, unless they're just phenomenal, like a Mike Trout, Mookie Betts, or a player of that caliber. But adding him to this team, it cemented everything, because now by having him at third base with his defense and offensive ability and put him in the lineup behind Goldschmidt, I don't like the fact that they let Colton Wong go. But now, since they did, you can slide Tommy Edman to second base, whereas before he was going to have to maybe put time in over at third. So now you still have a hole at second. That shifted the entire focus of this team. And then when you secured Adam Wainwright and Yadier Molina, again, everything else just fell into place. And it's crazy to me how one guy can make that big of a difference, because with baseball, you just usually can't. But in this case, it did. And a lot of it is just because of everything he brings to the table. They had the information that came out over the weekend about that Pujols had told Arenado, hey, this is before the trade happened. I hear that there's a chance you might get to go to St. Louis. If you get the chance to, take it. You will not regret it. And I take that because I think Pujols maybe has I think if he maybe had all the information back then that he has now, maybe things would have been a little bit different with how things worked out with him and leaving St. Louis. But tells me right there when a player of Albert Pujols' caliber tells him, hey, go to St. Louis, because you're not going to be you're going to be really happy that you did that. Arenado just made that total difference. And I'm really excited to see now I think we can win the Central and make a run. We're not a World Series contender yet, in my opinion, but we are that one step closer than what we were before.
Yeah, and I think Matt Holliday was in his ear a little bit too,
Absolutely.
Going to St. Louis, and you'll fall in love with it, and had ties with both the Rockies and Cardinals. But yeah, that was the move that put us over the top, in my opinion. Hayden, what are your thoughts on the offseason moves?
Well, obviously, early on, it was very disheartening to just see the Cardinals be the only MLB team that just continued to make no move in the offseason. But then there's that one 2-week span where they brought back Wainwright, Molina, and traded for Arenado. And while they did let Wong go, I feel like the Cardinals had their ideal offseason. I feel like the Fowler trade is kind of overlooked a lot, but I think that means so much in terms of where the Cardinals are putting their focus on. And I think it's about time that they put more effort into making sure the young outfielders get playing time. Because there was times the past few years where a young Lane Thomas or O'Neill comes up and they just sit on the bench the whole time. So I think making a move that forces them to give their younger outfielders a larger focus is really important for the team going forward. And like I said, the Wong walking hurts, but you have to think the Cardinals like what they have with Edman, and he's making league minimum. So it's kind of why sign back someone for $12 million, even someone at Wong's stature, if you have a guy making league minimum who has the potential to provide just as much value.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I hate to see Wong go too, but offensively, I think Edman's even a step above what Colton brought to the table. Defensively, I mean, that remains to be seen. It's going to be hard losing a Gold Glover like that, but at the same time, it makes a lot of sense to save that $12.5 million and kind of allocate towards other needs. But yeah, I appreciate those answers. Those good answers, and I agree with all of them. Jarrad, what do you got?
So if I was Colton Wong, I would take $1 million from my boss to leave my job. Just saying. No, so far I was just going to say, Waino looks pretty good so far coming out in his first couple of appearances. He looks to be in midseason form, which is rare compared to the rest of our starting pitchers so far. I was going to ask you guys too. It looks like Mikolas might be out. They just announced today. It looks like he might not make the opening day roster, which is something we had touched on last week. Chris is, his shoulder. They think they called it creaking. His shoulder's creaking, and they said Bader's forearm is barking. So they have a lot of good medical analogies for these injuries. But they're saying now he may not be making the opening day roster. So you got to figure maybe Martinez is going to take that spot. So maybe that's out of the question now. Martinez will probably take a spot. Who is your fifth starter? So let me go first to you, Brad. Who would you put as your fifth man in that starting rotation? If Martinez makes it, Mikolas is out.
Yeah, I think Martinez, it's a love-hate relationship with him. He's got all the talent in the world. It's just a matter of him really putting it all together. I think even before this, he was kind of the favorite to be that fifth guy. But yeah, I think he's cemented in there. My personal preference is Alex Reyes. I'm a huge Alex Reyes fan. I think if he can be stretched out enough to be that fifth guy in the rotation, he can be that missing link. I think that the rotation really needs. He's shown last year that he's electric out of the pen, so I wouldn't mind if they stick him back in the pen there. But my personal preference is just be Alex Reyes.
Yeah, I like Reyes too, and he's still got good stuff. He's just been injury plagued all these years, and he was such a top prospect. It seems like he's been in the league for 10 years now, and he's really only been a couple years with his injuries, and then he hurt himself by getting frustrated in the start. But I would like to see him too. I think he's only got a year or two left in arbitration before he's able to go explore free agency, and I would like to see what he can do as a starting pitcher before that actually happens. What about you, JP? If you had to, you're the manager, you're making out the rotation, you're filling out the lineup card, who would you slot in behind Martinez as your fifth starter?
Well, before they were an auto trade, I would have said Austin Gomber. But he went over to Colorado on that deal. I really like Daniel Ponce de Leon just because for some reason he just has that mental ability to come in. It doesn't matter what situation you need him for. He comes in and delivers in a pinch for long term. Now, if it's something short term, for a guy to miss a start here and there and kind of your plug in, that's where I think Alex Reyes could really shine because you don't want to prolong him and have him go too many innings right now because of the injury history. You need him to work into that. So for me, he's your plug in guy, but your long term, fill-in could have, for me, it's Ponce de Leon. This is where I think that they missed out on an opportunity to get like a Jake, and I'm going to forget his name now.
Odorizzi.
Before he signed with Houston, because he's your perfect guy that could have plugged in on that fifth rotation spot. He's gone now; he's not an option. So if you're going to go from within, for me, it's Ponce de Leon.
Yeah, I kept hoping, maybe with the longer he was out there in free agency and the longer nothing happened, that we might have a chance to get him kind of like people were comparing to the Kyle Loesch trade. But as soon as Valdez broke his finger with Houston, and I heard there was talks, I figured it would be only a short period of time.
But from what I understand, I guess the only reason I didn't sign him was the money. That's the only thing I can make sense out of.
Yeah, Cardinals pretty tight on the old wallet unless somebody's ponying up some serious cash or they find a way to free up money. They don't like to pay too much. But I agree with you on the whole Ponce de Leon thing. Chris and I have talked about him also. He's kind of just been, wherever you need me, plug me in, spot start here, piggyback there. He's kind of, always just been that plug-in guy. It'd be nice maybe. They always say, these guys like to prepare mentally. If he was told, hey, you're going to be in the rotation for the next foreseeable future, let's see what you can do. Maybe, and he gets his mindset on that and figures he's going to be a starter, maybe he would perform even better. Not that he's been bad up to this point.
I was really concerned, I was excited about the Arenado deal, but at first we heard that the deal was done, but we didn't even know what players were going back to Colorado in exchange. We had an idea of what was possible, but we didn't know for sure. So I never put any stock on who's going over to the other side until we have an official word. And I thought Ponce de Leon was a good option that maybe Colorado may say, hey, we want him for the same reasons that I like him. So the fact that he's still there, that to me, that's a big plus for the Cardinals.
Yeah, I had both those guys too. Very comparable pitchers. I said, I kind of figured like Gomber is the left-handed complement to Ponce and vice versa because they were both kind of similar. Not really garnered or figured in to be like permanent roles in the rotation, but thrown in here and there. Hayden, what about you? Who would you like to see in that fifth rotation spot? I know we've got a lot of options. If you look at Gant and Oviedo and some of these other guys, who's your sleeper rotation guy?
Well, I'm also a big backer of Alex Reyes. Like I forgot who said it, but just with his injury history, I'm not sure you can bank on him giving you those innings. Like when I think his best role is out of the pen, because out of the pen last year, he had one of his best seasons and he had great metrics too, which show it might be a long-term production, but I think they're either going to go with bullpen starter for fifth starting spot, or possibly Matthew Liberatore. It wouldn't be the craziest thing because Jordan Hicks came up from A-ball when he first started. So I don't think it's likely, but it wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world if Liberatore is the guy who fills in that fifth starter spot.
Yeah, that's an interesting take on things too. And with the minor league season basically being pushed back an extra 30 days at the least, I know they're looking at alternative camp things, but you got to figure there's some of these guys are going to figure out what to do with. So that may shape the roster a little bit because, I was thinking maybe Kinsner wouldn't be on the big league team at first because they're going to want him to play a lot more. But then again, if they don't have anywhere to send him right away, they're going to say, hey, playing on the big league team with Yachty in case something happens is more important to us. And, you mentioned Liberatore, and you've got Zach Thompson, who's also looked really good. And we do have room on the roster. We're at 39 on the 40-man, and that's with Dakota Hudson still being active. So once he gets shifted, there's 2 spots. So you could definitely see someone like one of them or a Parsons. But I like Reyes. I'd like to see him get the chance. But I think it's probably going to be Ponce, and unless they say Mikolas could be out for an extended period. Who knows at this point, because the Cardinals never tell you, and they always say they're going to push him back. He's fine though, but they're never fine. He'll be getting a second opinion in about 3 weeks, probably getting the leg amputated shortly after. Would be my guess. Chris, your thoughts into you, sir.
Well, we've touched on that too, and I think Gant and Ponce are both, options for that starter spot. But I would like to see Reyes get some shots too. The question for these guys would be, to get away from the starting rotation and look at the back end of the bullpen. Jordan Hicks is also coming off of injury and the being out last season with the COVID season. There is word that he's hitting 102 on the radar, but they're kind of easing him back into that closing role. Who do you guys think gets that role, or do you think it might just be a closer by committee type of situation where they just utilize multiple arms instead of one weapon for a closer role? Start with you.
Yeah, I mean, if I think eventually later on in the year it's going to end up being Hicks, but I kind of agree with you with the whole closer by committee. Might start off being Giovanni Gallegos. He'll probably be more reliant. Then you got. If Alex Reyes ends up in that bullpen, he's likely to have a chance to have a high leverage role like that. And then you got Andrew Miller, who's been up and down past couple of years. And but he definitely has that experience as well. And I like that they're easing Hicks in. Because it's been a while since he's pitched in a big league game, and he has the stuff, though. I think eventually it will just be handed over to Hicks.
Yeah, good news too on Hicks, you guys. I don't know if anyone else noticed, but they said he's faced live hitters twice, and he's supposed to pitch in his first, B, one of the backfield games on Wednesday. So those are all good signs so far. Just wanted to mention that.
JP, what do you think? Who do you think takes that closer role?
Well, I agree with what Brad said. I think it's Hicks to lose, but I think you have to work him in slowly because of the injury and then missing last year. The fact that he didn't face any live batters last year, it's one thing to try to stay in baseball shape, but then not to face live batters. It's a whole different animal. I can see them working him in to close a couple of games here and there, but I think it's his to lose maybe around the halfway point in the year if he's pitching well. But I think before that, probably a closer by committee. Part of me would be halfway tempted to try John Gant there, but I think Gant has a lot more value at the front end of the rotation because of the front end of the bullpen because of his ability. So I don't want to take him and put him in the closer spot because then you have a hole in the front part of the bullpen. So I think it's Hicks' job to lose, but you have to fill it here and there, just like you would with a spot starter for the rotation up until Hicks is ready to go. The early indications are good, but we all know that can turn on a dime. So let's not rush him back too quick because the guy has got a live arm like we haven't seen for quite a while. And I don't want to mess him up on that.
And Hayden, your thoughts? I know the lefties that we've got in the pen right now, we've got Webb, we've got, Miller and Genesis Cabrera, although, Cabrera can be stretched out to be a spot starter from time to time. But as far as that closer role, who would you take, Hayden?
I think doing a closer by committee is the best option because they should choose who to put in based on the matchup and their splits. And I think rotating that between like Reyes, Gallegos, Hicks, and Gant in the back end, whoever has the best match, like individual matchup or splits against that specific hitter, would be better than having some concrete closing pitcher.
I've always thought that would benefit a team, to not just have that one weapon. If you can throw multiple guys at the end of a game where, team isn't necessarily, hey, this is their closer, this is who I'm expecting. So, yeah, I like those answers. Definitely agreeable.
Well, it's different if you have like a closer like Mariano Rivera, but the Cardinals don't have like a closer that's like insane. So there's no reason to lock someone into that spot.
Right. I agree.
I will say this though. If there's a guy that's an X factor to me in the bullpen, I think it is Gallegos. I think he's got some really good stuff. I've liked what I've seen from him a lot. So if he goes out there, closer by committee, and goes out there and starts dominating, maybe you let him have a crack at it for the year and just create a little competition there. I mean, that's not a bad thing.
Just think we only had to give up Luke Voigt for that guy.
Yeah, that hurts. Yeah, but
never heard of her. We do have a lot of benefit to most teams don't. Whenever you're talking about, you have someone like Hicks, Gallegos, Miller, even Helsley, you get 4 potential guys that could be closing on any other given team in Major League Baseball. That's why, a lot of times we have a lot of unknowns with our pitching rotation, but we're pretty deep. Just talking about that, and we were covering last time, there's going to be a lot of guys on this team that might get cut, even with Mikolas going on the disabled list. There's guys like Cabrera, Elledge, Fernandez, Oviedo, Quezada, the new guy we just picked up. Those guys don't have a roster spot if they're going with 26 guys to fill it out. I mean, you've got Ponce, Gallegos, Webb is going to get a bullpen spot for sure. Let me ask you, who do you guys see? I want to ask you this first, Chris, because you always try to get out of answering my questions. So who do you see coming in as being your dark horse player this year? I mean, you've got a lot of battles going on right now, too. We have left field battle with Lane Thomas and O'Neill. They're number 1 and 2 on the team in average slugging percentage and OPS. And Thomas doesn't have a spot because Bader has to start for whatever reason. He's guaranteed to be our center fielder. But Thomas was a really good player, too, coming out 2 years ago till he broke his wrist. And now he came back last year and did well, even after having COVID. And he said it did affect him, like energy-wise and just getting back in the swing of things. And now he's playing very well this season. He's my pick. But who do you see, out of those guys, not figuring your Arenado, Goldschmidt, who's your breakout performer this year, Chris, or who's your dark horse to watch?
It's kind of a toss-up because I've really been high on Tyler O'Neill, and I hated to see him struggle. I don't think he's had that, full season under his belt of giving a go quite like a Harrison Bader has. I know his 170 average last year was lackluster, but he's got the speed of Bader. He's got way more power than Bader. Won a Gold Glove last year. I think he's on the cusp of doing some good things, depending on where they put him in the lineup. And, if he can be more of a consistent contact hitter, I think he takes his game to the next level and actually locks down a spot. I know him and Lane Thomas have both looked pretty good this spring so far. The Cardinals have pretty well been hell-bent on naming Bader your starter for sure, and Carlson is going to get as much playing time as he can possibly get. But I think Tyler O'Neill's one that a lot of people are sleeping on. I think he's going to have the breakout year.
Yeah, and I take a lot of these spring training results with a grain of salt because you never can really bank on them too much. But you have some of these battles like those positions, like a guy like Thomas, who going into spring training, depending on how the option thing ends out with Justin Williams and stuff, this could have been a guy that didn't make the team. Now he's playing his way, he's auditioning his way onto the team to where they're trying to find a spot for him. Because with that, they've already said they're only going to take 5 bench guys. We don't have a DH, so you got to figure Molina's one of those. Or not Molina. A catcher is going to be one, a backup for Molina will be one of those 5 spots. Sosa's out of options regardless of how the arbitration thing goes with the short season last year. So he's going to be on the team. Carp is going to be taking one of those, figuring Edman is your starting second baseman. So you have 2 spots, and they're basically outfield spots at this point, and there's even talk of Nogawitzki making the team. So you have to think, who's going to make it? Is it going to be Thomas? Is it going to be Williams? You also have Austin Dean. There's a lot of guys that could potentially make this team for very limited spots. So we've got a lot of battles going on, but I'm going to swing it around backwards. Again, we're here on YouTube Live and sharing on Facebook group and page. We're with Brad Kehl from Art City Media, JP Maxwell from the Midmo Sports Show, and Hayden See from STL SportsCentral. So I'm going to go backwards on the table this time, and I'm going to ask you, Hayden, who do you see this year as being your breakout performer here?
Okay, I'm scared to say this, but Harrison Bader.
Don't be scared. No, hold on. We didn't hear you. It could be a live feed problem. I'm just kidding. We heard you. I was just messing with you.
I'm about to say.
I'm just messing with you.
No. Yeah, I feel like Cardinals fans, in their eyes, Harrison Bader can do no right. Like, I don't know what it is with him. They picked him out as a player to hate. And what I think most people fail to realize, and I don't know why, is that even if Harrison Bader performs below average offensively, with his top-tier defense, arguably the best outfield defense in baseball, he would still be one of the most valuable players on the team if he's given consistent playing time, which I think will really help him with his bat as well. Because back when Matheny was the coach and like Bader had to really stress about starting, he made risky plays at times that he thought would benefit him and make him be in center field more often. But I think with Schilt being behind him and saying, we believe in you, it'll make Bader more relaxed and be able to perform where I think he's able to perform at.
Yeah, that's actually a good choice. And I'm one of those guys too that gives Bader a hard time. I wish he could swing the bat a little better, but I want him to do well. It just makes it tough when you've got all these young guys and coming up that are playing well. But Bader doesn't necessarily hurt you out there. And we've talked about this before too, Chris. A guy like Bader doesn't hurt you. But what brings out the emphasis on Bader in the past is whenever you've had the rest of the team hitting 220, 240. Because normally guys like Bader are consistent. If they don't swing the bat as well, you live with it because he's great in the outfield. He does other things right. He runs the base paths well. So that normally doesn't hurt you. But when you have a whole team, like DeYoung and everyone and your leadoff guy and Carp and everyone is hitting 200, brings more emphasis, and everyone just says they have kind of picked on him, and myself included. Hey, what's going on? Why is he still in the game? So that's a good choice, and hopefully you're right. Hopefully he does well. JP, who would you pick as your dark horse performer this year on the team?
He's so young, but for me, I really think Dylan Carlson could break out. I think a lot of it's because he's going to have a solidified spot. He was kind of being a floater and platooning all the different, outfield positions. Now that he knows his spot and where he belongs on the team, especially if they put him, for me, try him out in the 2 spot, because they're going to have to be very selective about pitching to Goldschmidt and Arenado right in the middle of that lineup. He's going to get some pitches to hit. Let's see what the kid can do. So I think now that he's solidified, put him in the 2-hole and just let the kid rake, see what he can do here. We saw him come to life in the latter part of the season. I think now is his time. It's just a gut instinct is what I'm calling it.
No, and that's a great pick too. And somebody just the whole Arenado trade just amplifies all this. And we've touched on this before. I'm sure you guys have in your articles and your videos and stuff and your podcast as well. Is adding someone like an Arenado tremendously transforms the whole shape of the batting order and what everyone's going to be able to do. Just like bring Molina in, people were saying the same thing about Molina. Oh, he's only going to hit 200. Well, having Molina on the team encompasses a lot more than just what his batting average is.
No,
it's
we saw Molina's value in what happened during spring training yesterday.
Oh, that was hilarious!
Cutting down that runner. I mean, that's what he brings to the table.
I had that on my list. That was so freaking hilarious, dude. I can't believe the guy did the Jose Siri did the finger wave at him, and Molina was like, "Go ahead, take the base." That was fantastic. You couldn't have scripted that any better.
Nope.
That worked out well. But having someone like an Arenado is going to take less pressure off Carlson, and I kind of like what you said about the two-hole, honestly. He's going to get pitches to hit because if you got Goldschmidt behind him, they're not going to be – they're going to say, well, here's another attempt it out for me. I don't want to go at – they're not going to go at Goldie and Arenado every time. So putting him in
Well, and here's the thing, too, about Goldschmidt in the three-hole this year is that in the 2 years previous, his numbers were not what they were in Arizona. But you got to remember, he wasn't getting anything to hit. He was getting all the junk and having all the pressure getting on base because besides Edman, nobody's really getting on base consistently. Now with Arenado behind him and the lineup now as it's constituted, he's going to now get pitches to hit because you don't want to put two guys on and then have Arenado bat. He'll jack it out over the fence. So I think Goldschmidt could really have a breakout year too, but he's too established. That's why I didn't mention him on here, but I think he's going to have a bounce back year too.
Well, that's what happened with Ozuna. He excelled on Miami because he had Stanton behind him. Then he came to St. Louis, struggled, and then he goes to Atlanta, and excels. And you can just tell that, well, correlation is equal causation, but, well, he had Freeman hitting behind him and Stanton hitting behind him. And in St. Louis, he had, DeYoung hitting behind him. That's just not comparable.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's another good correlation. Then you bring up DeYoung. I think having somebody like an Arenado is also going to make DeYoung better. It's less pressure on him because I think he did have more pressure thinking, okay, I've got to go out and I've got to jack home runs. So then he starts hitting 200 and it just changes the whole shape of the lineup. And I think that's why Goldschmidt had a good year last year, batting average wise. It's because we had so many guys underperforming with the bat due to COVID or, short season, whatever you want to throw out there. But we had a lot of guys that didn't hit very well. And I think a lot of that was because they said, okay, well, he's the only guy hitting 300. We'll just pitch to him. And that's what they did last year. But I think now they're going to have to be more protective. And I think Edman's good in the leadoff spot. Carlson and, hit 2. Arenado, you can move DeYoung down a spot, less pressure on him. And then you have guys like Bader that can ease themselves into the game more. And they don't have to say, I got to get on base here. I got to make something happen. It kind of just takes less stress off everybody else. And with Goldie and Arenado sharing that 1-2 punch, I think it just kind of helps. What about you, Brad? Who would be your dark horse performer on the team this year be? Who do you think is going to have a breakout season?
I agree with both Hayden and JP. I mean, Bader, people don't like him. He can't hit the righties, but he barrels the ball consistently. I mean, he's in the upper, I think I heard the other day, upper 30% in the league.
20.
And barrel rate. But, I mean, I love the idea of Dylan Carlson. I mean, if we can get him hitting in the 2-hole ahead of Goldschmidt, ahead of Arenado, he's going to see so many pitches to see. I mean, they're not going to want to pitch around him because, I mean, why would you want to put him on in front of our 2 big boppers? I mean, he's going to have so many pitches to hit, I think. And as JP said, he really took off at the end of the year. I mean, didn't he end up hitting cleanup in the playoffs for us, I think?
He did. They sent him to the alternative camp for a while, and then when he came back, they put him behind Goldschmidt. And I think it was one of those things to where pitchers were like, okay, well, the rest of these guys aren't doing well, and he had a chance to see some more aggressive pitching, I think, and get some things lined out and work on his approach, and he was crushing it in the second half of, to end out the season last year.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's primed for probably the biggest breakout of the three that we mentioned: O'Neill, Bader, and Carlson.
Yeah, all good choices. Chris, what do you have to? I know JP, if you have to run, just let us know, or just disappear, or whatever you want.
I still got a few more minutes, so
okay. Chris, go ahead.
Not to go from a positive to a negative, but as far as concerns for the team, and I know outfield wise, we've got a lot of young talent out there that could be inexperience could bite us in the butt on that. Same with the bullpen with the young arms. But what do you guys see as this team's biggest weakness? I mean, last year was an anemic offense. I know bringing Arenado in kind of helps fix some of that, but that is just one player. When you see Carp struggling where he hasn't had a hit, the spring training, not to sound like some of our group members out there, but there are some concerns out there for you guys. What do you think the biggest concern or your biggest worry about this team heading into the season is? We'll start with Brad.
Yeah, I agree. The outfield, I think, is the biggest area of concern just because they're so inexperienced. I mean, we had Fowler that we just traded away. I mean, yeah, he wasn't that great, but I mean, he was that veteran presence in the outfield. He played better the past couple seasons, but I mean, we really need Carlson, Bader, O'Neill, Thomas, some combination of those guys to really step up and produce for us.
Yeah, I agree. What are your thoughts, JP?
Well, I was tempted to say outfield, but one thing I like is how Mike Schilt deals with young players compared to Mike Matheny and other managers that we've had. I think the way he utilizes them and gets them to play kind of alleviates my concern on that. Mine is still the rotation because you were counting on Michaelis to come back. Now here he is, get another opinion. Chances are the rumor is I'm hearing he could need Tommy John, which means he's going to miss significant time. Now, one thing, though, I'll caveat that by saying one thing that's going to help your pitching staff, though, is the defense is even better. We might have one of the best. We will have a top 5 defense in baseball. If we don't, I'll be shocked. Because Arenado, having him at third and then shifting Edman over to second, and we know what Bader and his ability in center field, if nothing else. Tyler O'Neill just won a Gold Glove this last year. And I think Dylan Carlson can hold his own. So the fact the defense is that much better, that's going to help your rotation. So that might be the saving grace, partly on that. But it's the depth of the pitching staff. We can't afford many injuries. And if we start seeing guys fall, we have minor league depth, but then you have the inexperience of those pitchers, and that could come back to bite us. But for me, it's definitely the rotation right now, unless something changes. And I don't see them making, now that Odorizzi is gone, this is the team that we have, unless, in my opinion, they're making a run and we get to the trade deadline. Maybe they go and grab a pitcher to solidify themselves. But until then, this is who we have. So we can't afford any more bumps in the road with this rotation.
Yeah, I know when you look at the starting rotations of a team like the Dodgers and the Padres,
yep,
kind of head and shoulders above where we're at. Hayden, I'll throw it to you. What do you think our biggest weakness is right now?
Well, I agree with what was just said. I feel like the Cardinals' biggest weakness is definitely keeping their pitchers healthy, because they definitely have really, really good talent pitching wise, but you really need to find a way to fill in those innings, get an innings eater, because Reyes, Martinez, they're way too injury prone to count on pitching 200 plus innings. And also Michaelis going down, and then Wainwright with his old age. The starting pitching is really, really injury prone. And I feel like if they stay healthy, it'll be a really a big plus for the team, because I just don't see it happening. There's too many high risk guys.
Yeah, I know Jarrad and I, we've talked about having such a plethora of available arms, especially young arms that could come in and take a fifth starter spot, or even, throughout the bullpen, there's going to be several guys not make the team. But again, that comes down to a lot of inexperience when you're talking to Noviedo or Fernandez or Quezada, or just a lot of these young guys that, that's just for bullpen role. But, pitching wise, the Cardinals they don't stack up that well with some of the top tier teams. So making a push in the playoffs, I think that's that's probably going to be one of the primary concerns is the starting rotation.
Yeah, it's kind of like JP was saying a little while ago. It's unproven. We have all these guys. Like, we have guys that are going to be starters and could be high impact starters, like Liberatore, Zach Thompson, Johan Oviedo. We have a lot of guys that could come in and do some damage, but you can't really put a huge load on those guys coming in if we get and expect them to do well. Now they might. That stars are born sometimes that way. If someone gets hurt. Someone asked that the other day too. What happens if Yachty gets hurt? Well, then Kinsler is going to be playing every day. I mean, sometimes it's just by choice. It's like, hey, now's your time, and they might perform and they might not. But we have a lot of what ifs, but nothing's guaranteed, and nothing ever is in baseball. You can have a guy that's a Cy Young Award winner one year and go out and be in the mid fives the next. So it's got to take it day by day, I think, and see what happens. So I guess that's going to bring us to my next one, and I'm gonna mix up my rotation here. I'm going to give Brad an extra day of rest and hit him last on the question. So JP, you're on the bump. What do you think about Yadier Molina? It was a question that was posed to us. Do you think he is a first ballot Hall of Famer? And then second part follow up to that is, do you see him playing an extensive number of games this year? Do you think the Cardinals begin to ease him back, or is it just based on performance?
For me, I'll just put it this way, because I've got to watch him, every game, being a Cardinals fan. 100% Hall of Famer. I don't think it's even a question. Just because of what he does behind the plate, the amount of Gold Gloves that he's won, and that leadership that he brings to the pitching staff. To me, should be first ballot. Now we know how the Hall of Fame works. I mean, so many guys that should have been first ballot weren't, just because they want to make a statement. So, I mean, to me, that's where it gets kind of arbitrary, because the writers decide they want to make a stance or something. I just don't understand that part of it. But to me, first ballot, without a doubt. And if he's not, to me, it's a crock. But it's the second question's more difficult, because it would seem to make sense that you want to start easing him back, just because Yachty's probably only got a couple more years, and you've got to start grooming Kisner or whoever it is to be the full-time catcher. But then when you see Yachty do what he did yesterday, you realize how much above he is of everybody else. So you might have a game where you sit Yachty, and then what if something that Andrew Kisner did is not just what he might do at the plate or behind the plate catching? What if he tells the pitcher, pitch the wrong pitch, boom, 3-1 home run, it turns the whole game around, and now it's a loss. You can't afford to do that. So, I mean, if Yachty is behind the plate and you're winning, are they going to sit him? I don't think so, because in my opinion, we should win this Central Division. It's ours now. So you don't want to give up games that you shouldn't give up. That one's tough, because it would make sense to do that. But, and Yachty too, he's not going to want to sit much because he's that competitive. I think he almost went to another team this year just because I think he was starting to get that feeling that, hey, I may not get to play as much if I return to St. Louis. Now something happened, and he stayed, but he's too competitive for that. And that's where that fine line is when you have a Hall of Fame player. When you start sitting him and tell him, hey, it's team over you, but then you want him playing if he's delivering. So I don't know. That's a really tough one.
Yeah, I think a lot of it will be dictated by performance to a degree, if they're going to factor that in, because it's kind of like how we said, what he does at the bat doesn't really garner how he handles the rest of the game, even if his throwing out, his percentage of throwing out would-be base stealers is down. It's like you said, the way he manages a pitching staff. And I think Waino was a big part of him coming back, but he also did acknowledge in an interview that he did that, the Cardinals and him have discussed transition, like starting to transition. I think whether that's a 1 year or a 2 year thing will be also determined. People are saying, oh, he'll play again next year. I think that will also be determined on how this year goes and if he's healthy and how he performs. And if he feels like he wants, he's going to say he wants to now, obviously, but then if he plays another year, him and Pujols won't be able to retire together. And then we're talking about mass anarchy. And who knows what will happen. The Facebook group and page will crash, Chris. You'll have to start all over again. Back to fan one.
Yeah.
Hayden, let me ask you, what do you think? Do you think Yachty is a first ballot Hall of Famer in your opinion? And then do you see him taking a heavy workload this season?
Well, I think anyone who says he's not a Hall of Famer is just trying to get clicks on their articles, because just on his accolades or his presence behind the plate alone, he's a Hall of Famer, and he has both of them. So I don't see any logical reason to say he's not a Hall of Famer unless you're just trying to get attention on your article.
Did you read my article about he's not?
Not yet.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I didn't do that, but that's a good point. So I guess just to stir controversy would be a good reason why. But you never know. But I don't think Yachty's anything to piss off a lot of reporters, like JP was saying earlier. It's all politics, and I thought it was kind of a big joke this year. This is not Cardinal related that nobody was elected to the Hall of Fame. I mean, how the hell does that even happen? I think it's kind of an embarrassment. I mean, they're not super. There's not a ton of superstars, but you're trying to tell me, which McGwire was already a travesty, but you're not going to put Roger Clemens or Barry Bonds in the Hall of Fame. It's just, I mean, I know why, but I think it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. Brett, what do you think? I'm sure you're probably going to agree with this because you don't want to be chastised, and the group loves to do that, and I know you're active there. So is Yachty a first ballot Hall of Famer? And you think the same thing? You see him taking the bulk of the innings behind the dish this year?
Yeah, the past few years, I actually questioned whether he was a first ballot Hall of Famer. I thought this few years ago, I thought he'd get in like year 5 or 6. Now I think there's no question.
Chris, what'd you say? Chris texted me and told me to cut your feed. Hold on a second. Just kidding. No, sorry, man. Go ahead.
No, I think now, without a doubt, he's first ballot. But I mean, like the other guys have said, I mean, his leadership, the way he handles pitching staff, his defense, all those Gold Gloves up on his mantle. I mean, he even has a few platinum gloves too. So I mean, there's no question he's a first ballot Hall of Famer to me.
I mean, who invites a runner to steal second and throws him out by a second and a half?
Yeah,
that's insane.
Is Yadier Molina good?
He's okay.
Yeah. I mean,
I got to rank that play. Sorry, Brad. I got to rank that like right below the Brandon Phillips fight in Cincinnati where, he was talking crap in the media and Yachty just basically confronted him at the plate like, hey, what's up? What do you got to say?
Right.
That's got to be – those are my top 2 best Yachty moments, I think.
Yeah, that was great. Like when I was watching that game yesterday, when I saw Jose Siri do that, taunt him like that, I was like, what are you doing? I was actually hoping Yachty would try to pick him off at first again on the very next pitch, but
Siri thought to himself, the Astros as a team, we don't have enough heat. What can I do aside from the cheating scandal to draw some attention?
Right. But yeah, as for he's playing time this year, I mean, he's gonna want to play all 162. I mean, but I think he's gonna be playing at least 130. I mean, you'll get some days off, so you can have it be Kisner or Ali Sanchez or Tyler Heineman in there. I mean, you gotta rest Yachty, especially if you're planning on making that deep run in the playoffs. You gotta have him healthy, rested for the hopeful long postseason run.
Yeah, and poor Kinsner's just kind of become the reincarnated Carson Kelly, it seems like. Poor guy, and I think that's the way he's going to finish out. Chris, head over to you, sir.
Yeah, going from that Hall of Fame question to another, I know the Cardinals recently had put out the 5 nominees for this year's Cardinals Hall of Fame, and it was Steve Carlton, Keith Hernandez, Matt Morris, Edgar Renteria, and Lee Smith. This year, they're only taking one that'll join the class that didn't quite get inducted, last year. But who would you guys use your one vote for out of those 5? I know there's a case to be made for each of them. I'm just curious to hear your take on who you would vote for this year's Cardinals Hall of Fame. We'll start with Hayden.
You're starting me. I'm a little bit not in the loop with this because these guys are way past my time. But I think probably either Steve Carlton or Keith Hernandez. I feel like, especially for me, they just carry more weight with their name. And I feel like when you think of them, you think of the Cardinals. Well, maybe not Keith Hernandez, but Steve Carlton. I feel like he should definitely be a Cardinals Hall of Famer. Maybe even Lee Smith. I don't know. It's tough, especially when you didn't watch him play.
Yeah, Lee Smith was kind of someone I picked too, Hayden, but he was who I picked when we talked about this just amongst us. And just because if you look at his numbers when he was a Cardinal were pretty astronomical, and I didn't even realize how good and basically commanding he was in his short run with the Cardinals. But a lot of those guys, even Matt Morris, I didn't realize how good Matt Morris was until I started checking into it. I'm like, damn, I don't remember. And I was watching that. I'm like, I don't remember Matt Morris being that good. I remember him and Woody Williams and those guys being our rotation and figuring how the hell are we going to do anything. But
JP, what are your thoughts? I know, Keith Hernandez, the big bugaboo with him is he had the falling out with, Whitey Herzog, and everybody does consider him a Met. But, he had a 10-year career in St. Louis, 6 straight Gold Gloves. That was my pick of who I would go with. But Carlton, Morris, Renteria, and Lee Smith, all good options. Who would you be taking?
I'm tempted to say Matt Morris because I got to watch him pitch. I know how good he was. And it seemed like after Darryl Kyle's death, he just took over that spot and just came into his own. But he's got more time to get in. For me, because of that and only taking one, it's got to be Steve Carlton, because every franchise has that trade they wish they could have back. And I think that's probably the Cardinals trade, is to have gave Steve Carlton up, especially for what they gave him up for. It was essentially a money deal way back then. They basically sold him is what it comes down to. And I think that if they could have that one back, they would take it back real quick. So with all those different things considered, it's got to be Steve Carlton without a doubt.
What say you, Brad?
Yeah, for me, it's between Carlton, Hernandez, and Lee Smith. I mean, kind of like what JP said. I mean, Edgar and Matt Morris, they both have a lot of time. And I know me and you kind of had a conversation the other day about whether or not too many players are actually getting into the Cardinal Hall of Fame. I mean, to me, when I think of Hall of Fame, the elite of the elite, I don't want to see it watered down, which, I mean, that's another topic. But if I had to choose, I'd probably go Carlton as well. I mean, Hall of Famer in general. I mean, his time with the Cardinals was great as well. I mean, it's got to be him.
Yeah, not bad answers. I mean, you can't go wrong with any of them. I kind of went with Hernandez knowing I'd catch some flack because everybody does kind of label him as a Met. I just think that decade run of 6 straight Gold Gloves, 299 career hitter for the Cardinals. And I loved Lee Smith, and that's Jarrad's pick. But, a 4-year career to a 10-year career, and you can't be watering it down with those type of players. But as you said, like eventually, at what point is the criteria going to water down to where we're just letting anybody in? I know there's been some people clamoring that David Freese will get in just for the heroics of, what he did. And it's kind of a crapshoot because eventually you don't want to see everybody in with a red jacket. But yeah, you couldn't go wrong with any of those options for this season. Good answers, guys.
The bad part of it is everyone, it's easier to remember the most recent stuff, right? So that's why, some of the older guys, it's hard to remember for some of the younger fans, especially, like, oh, I don't know those guys. I mean, I know they're good, but I don't know what they did, so I think that kind of makes it tough. And that's why in the past, the guys obviously younger fans are online more. So I think it's why you see guys like Scott Rolla and all them. Undoubtedly they should be anyways, but it's pretty much when they mention their name, you're like, oh yeah, he's going in for sure. I'm surprised I just went with one this year. And I also like the way you threw Hayden off there because I figured you're kind of like Mike Matheny and Brad was kind of like your Seth Manis there. He's like, every time you're going to the bullpen, you're bringing him in. He's working that arm. You threw Hayden off. You threw a little mix up there. He wasn't warmed up yet. He hadn't started throwing. So we do have a question, and I'll throw that out there. I know there's a lot of what ifs involved, but it comes from Rodney Hale. But he wants to know, do you think the Cardinals will make a move at the deadline, which could be pretty broad? And I will answer that first, and I will say yes. And then the next question, no, I'm just kidding. I'll say yes. A lot of that depends, on how the team will be at the deadline. Are they going to be uh, doing well? Are they going to be falling short of expectations? I feel like if they're out of the hunt at the deadline, there could be a move or two made to try to free up, I don't know, some kind of money for next year. But I think if they're in competition and they need something, and they're going to deal to where they need that. So we talked about pitching. If that's a weakness at the time, they could go for a pitcher. If the outfield is underperforming, they could go out and try to get an outfielder. I think if they're trying to go all in with Wainwright and Yachty being their last season, they're going to make those efforts. And a lot of people have thrown out Max Scherzer. JP, your thoughts? If the Cardinals are in a contingent position, they're contending at the trade deadline, do you see them going out and trying to make a splash, especially with it being Yachty and Waino's final season?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of different factors. Again, it depends on position and exactly how we're doing. But I mean, if you're leading the division, but you're still a little bit weak, to me, the position that's going to come open that you could use a move like that if the right guy's available is definitely the rotation. And I mean, it was known that Max Scherzer wanted to come here anyway, and it didn't happen. He's a Mizzou guy. He's from the St. Louis area, yet he went to Washington. I understand it was for the money. But if he's out there and Washington's out of it and he has a chance to come home and make a run with the Cardinals, you do it. If it's the right guy at the right time, absolutely. If you look at the Dodgers, they already had a great rotation anyway. And then they go out and add Trevor Bauer, who I'm not really big on, but he was one of the big names that you could have added. They go out there and spend the money. I don't care if you have 5 Hall of Fame pitchers in a rotation. My question is, who's your 6th guy? Because eventually you're going to have to use them. Somebody's going to get hurt. Somebody's going to need to miss a start or two. So to me, that's probably the position that will need to be addressed. And you absolutely have to do that if you're the Cardinals. Now, the thing that makes this interesting is COVID, because the finances are just completely messed up. Typically in an off season, you don't let a 2-time Gold Glove Award winner and Colton Wong walk for $12.5 million, or actually $11.5 million, because you had a $1 million buyout that you had to pay him no matter what. Because of COVID, they did. Now with the Arenado trade, that's worked out, but I think with the rotation, that's where the need's going to be. And so if the right guy's there, yeah, you have to make the move, unless it doesn't make sense because of giving up a young pitcher or something that you don't want to give up. But I think this team is now in a win now mode because of Arenado, and it's ours. So go out there and make that deal if it's there to be had.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I think it kind of goes back to where we have some unknown questions, but we also have areas of depth. We do have the outfield is probably, as far as deep in the minor leagues, is not as strong, but we're deep at third. We obviously have people like Luke and Baker that was rumored to be in the Arenado deal. That's not going to have a spot to play at first. You do have Gorman. I know they're trying to work him out somewhere else, but you have Jordan Walker, who is a standout stud right behind him. You've got Liberatore, Thompson, and then we have who we just talked about. We have Kinsner, who is basically just doing nothing for us and just eating up value. But Hayden, you look prepared. So I'm going to go to you, sir. What do you see? You look like you're warm up. You're ready. You're ready for the call. So I'm going to signal for you. What do you think kind of move the Cardinals make going into the deadline if they're in a contending position?
Well, I think it's definitely going to be around the rotation, because I know I'm sounding like a broken record here, but that seems like their main issue with the Cardinals is getting innings eaten, because they have the talent. No one's questioning that. It's just they don't have anyone that's able to take up all those innings, especially with all the injury history and older guys on the team.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you too. I mean, broken record, but you're right, because even if you have 3 or 4 guys in your rotation that are performing well, and you go out and get a rotation piece, you kind of shuffle things around, and the series is going to change that. If you have all your outfielders hitting 300 with 20 home runs apiece, you can't just really take one and put on the bench, but it's easier to adjust that rotation. Brad, what about you? You see this being a good year, and you think the Cardinals might be more inclined to make a move if it's going to be, a chance to be Wainwright and Molina's last season. They might kind of more willing to make that move and be all in. Would you think?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely anticipate this being a good year. I mean, it seems like the past few years, the deadline, it's been pretty quiet. If they did make a move, it'd be for a bullpen piece. I wouldn't be surprised if they go that route. I agree with the other guys. Starting rotation, I think, is definitely something that you need to keep an eye on. I'd love to see Max Scherzer, but I don't really see the Nats being in a position where they need to trade him. I fully anticipate the Nationals being a contender this year, so I don't really think Max is going to be an option for us. One guy that I think could be someone to look at, and he's looked decent so far this year, Felix Hernandez. He's with the Baltimore Orioles now. He's likely going to make their rotation. He signed a minor league deal, but I mean, I think he's just going to be used as trade bait. I mean, you mentioned Andrew Kisner, but I don't think the Orioles would want Kisner since they have Adley Rutschman, the number 2 overall prospect in the game. But I think Andrew Kisner would be involved in some sort of deal at the deadline.
Yeah, it could be a 3-team trade or who knows. I was just seeing him eating time away with us, and he's getting older, so his value is just dropping every. Yeah, I'm glad Yachty's back. Obviously, I wanted Yachty back, but the longer you keep Kinsler just like Kelly, and he's not doing anything, the more his value just plummets. And Herrera's already about to overtake him on the depth chart. I would think Herrera's a little more touted at this point, and I would say the heir apparent to Yachty or Molina, and pretty much models himself after him. So we usually do, and it might not be a big trade too. So I'm glad you brought that up too with Felix, because the big trade that paid off for us was with the Blue Jays, in 2011 with Rasmus, when we went out and got a bunch of guys and nobody thought we should go after, like Dotel and those guys, but it was just the right, and Edwin Jackson, and it was just the right. And what was it, Corey Patterson? He was the other one. Yeah, it was just like the right pieces that we needed to kind of go out and make things click and make things happen.
Jeff Weaver.
Yeah, and Jeff Weaver in the past too, and he performed really well for us. So it's just kind of getting the right complementary piece, that might make things work. I don't know. Scherzer seems like he's becoming the next Arenado. Lawless.
Well, I'm sure you might have another question to ask these guys. I'll end with this. This will be my last question for you guys. But the expectations for this season, I know it's too early to predict much, but if we had to just go out on a limb today and say where you guys expect this Cardinals team to wind up, whether it's a wild card spot, winning the division, making a playoff appearance, or an actual push to make the World Series. Where do you guys see this Cardinals team as it stands now, if there's no more additions to the team finishing up this season? And we can always come back and revisit this episode and laugh at how off we are, or we can brag about how right we are. But what say you guys? We'll start with JP.
I think that they win the Central Division. I see them winning 91 games is my number. The Cubs have done nothing. In fact, they've actually lost players for the first time in quite a while. The Brewers added Colton Wong, but outside of that, they haven't added much. They've got a decent team, but you look at this division, it's ours. So for me, they win the Central. They win the first round of the playoffs. I think now there's an extra round, right, because of the COVID expansion. Is that the same as it was last year, I believe?
No,
or is it back to traditional? It's back to traditional?
It's still, they're saying that it could change. As of right now, it's traditional, but there's
okay.
But a lot of people think that they might make something happen toward right up till the day of the season, to where they might add the DH and expand the playoffs. But as of now, it's old school.
If they end up expanding, I can see the Cardinals winning, a round or two. If it's traditional, they'll get in because of winning the division, and I think they can be competitive. But I think they could make a run to the NLCS, but I don't think that they're ready for the World Series just yet. But they'll be close.
Good answer. It's the same number I've got them at. It's 91 wins. And, as I looked at the division, I kind of look at Cincinnati and Chicago, kind of a 500 team, and Milwaukee kind of giving us a little bit of a fit, but I think the division is ours to lose. So I agree with that. What's your thoughts, Brad?
Yeah, I'm higher on Milwaukee. They just added Jackie Bradley Jr. the other day. We know they added Wong. I'm really high on a couple of their pitchers, Brandon Woodruff and Corbin Burns. I mean, I think they're going to have huge years, and they're going to be a big reason why they push us to the brink. I think Cardinals win 92 games and win the division. As for how we do in the playoffs, I think by winning 92 games, we'll end up going up against whoever comes out of the East. Right now, I think that's going to be Atlanta. So kind of a rematch from 2019. And I mean, I think we match it fairly well against Atlanta the way things look right now. But I don't see us getting past the Dodgers or the Padres. Those two teams are just loaded. I fully expect one of those two teams to represent the National League quite possibly.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, I mean, I would love for us to kind of upset those two, but to be honest, I don't see that happening. But crazier things have happened.
Yeah,
I got to jump off. So
right on, JP.
Yeah, thanks, JP. Thanks for stopping
appreciate
by.
you guys having me on.
Yep, appreciate you joining.
Did you tell me? Did you talking to me, Chris?
No, I'm good. You're good.
Oh, I thought you said something to me. My last question, and I'll ask the three of you, and then we'll wrap it up here real quick. And I'll start with you, Hayden. Hayden, do you see Matt Carpenter completing the full year on the team? I'm not talking about trade. I'm talking about traded, DFA, what have you. Do you think Matt Carpenter will still be a St. Louis Cardinal at the conclusion of the season?
That's a tough question, but I think ultimately, yes. That's due to him having a full no trade clause, him being like him raising his family in St. Louis. His family's been there since they've been born. So I don't think a guy would like him, especially as much of a family man as he seems like, would want to uproot his family. And also, I just feel like, especially with Molina, possibly this being his last year, and Wainwright this being his last year, Carpenter could be one of the only veteran players the Cardinals have in the clubhouse. So that's valuable beyond the box score. And that's definitely a guy you want to have around to help out young guys like DeYoung and Carlson, and even like Lane Thomas and Bader get going in the major leagues. And I also think he does provide value. He's definitely not having the start he wanted to spring training this year, but he can get so hot when like crazy moments like that, that month of June or July, where he had like the 4 runs against the Cubs. That just shows you how lethal he can be when he's right, which I think it is possible. We could see that MVP caliber Matt Carpenter back if he doesn't get injured.
Yeah, I would like to see him definitely come back and show us some of that home run power. If you could get that back and put him behind Arenado and in front of DeYoung or somebody like that. So I keep hoping just to myself that they let the DH come back into play this year and somehow make it work before the season starts, because I feel like that's the only way we're for sure going to be able to see him play every day. And I would like to see him at least get that opportunity. You know, spring hasn't looked good, like you said also, and he doesn't look very good right now, but sometimes, you know, things just don't click for these guys, whatever, until the season starts. So I would like that to be put into play, and hopefully he would get a chance to DH and play every day and play himself out of the lineup. You know, I was just thinking the only way I was thinking is if he just did completely horrible and at the point was just taking up a roster spot. You know, you might see him being DFA just because he doesn't have any years left, and that's obviously worst case scenario. And I know he said he would waive his no trade clause if the Cardinals ever wanted to trade him, but saying that and then having it happen are two separate things. Brad, sit tight, keep warming up in the bullpen. You're going to be my closer. Chris, what do you think? You think Carp is going to be on the team this whole entire season?
I do think that's the case. And again, I don't want to sound like some of the group members that just want to bag on Carpenter. When I watch the guy bat, and especially in spring training, he's striking out looking already. In a spring training game, who gives a hell if you strike out? Swing the bat, see what you can do with it. And the thing with Carpenter is he swings like he has a broken rib. Like he has no extension. He tucks that arm in. And I'm no hitting instructor, but something's got to give. And the guy he doesn't look comfortable at the plate. He sees way too many pitches. But with this being his last season under contract, I don't think he's going to get the amount of plate appearances that gets him a renewed deal with the team. But
I don't think it'll trigger his option. He'd have to get hot and play nonstop.
Right. So, I think he finishes his career here in St. Louis with this year. I don't think he goes anywhere else after, unless he has a semi-decent year. I just don't see it happening. I wish he'd get it together. I know he's, a hell of a guy and a hell of a ball player, but he's kind of fell victim to his own ways. He's kind of stuck in how he's swinging. And if he's on, he's on. But when he's off, he's off.
Yeah, it's one of those things to where it's almost like he's trying to take the bat out of his own hands. He's like trying to make himself draw a walk, and he's been good at it in the past and he's had a good eye, but sometimes you just want to see him try to make good contact. And kind of like you said, it's almost like he's choking up on the bat too much, or even like Matt was saying, like he has a bad back or something. Like he's not getting good enough extension. You see a lot of these good players, even Yachty, they do everything they can to make contact. They one hand at the end or just trying to get the end of the bat on the ball. So see him be more aggressive, and maybe if he's DH and he would have that opportunity, that's kind of what I'd like to see, that he would kind of ease his mind, because I think now he is thinking, Edman is probably going to be the second baseman. I'm trying to fight my way on this team. I've got to go out here and hit, and all these guys get pressure on them. So, maybe if that came out and they said, hey, you're looking to be our DH to start the season, it might get him more into a comfort zone. Brad, what do you think? It's Carp's last season. Do you think he performs well, or do you think it ends up being a situation to where he might not be a Cardinal at the end of the season, to where he gets released or traded?
I definitely think it's his last year. I mean, he's got that vesting option. I think if I remember, it's like 550 plate appearances he has to get, which he's only done, I think, 4 times, if I remember right. Might be 750. It's either 550 or 750. I don't remember the math, but he's only, whichever one it is, he's only accomplished it 4 times, and there's no way he's getting that this year.
I think they'll make sure he doesn't get that many.
I'd have to agree with that too. I mean, they'll finagle something where sit him so many games that way he's not gonna.
Yeah, he won't get close, but I think if he did, it would be one of those things to where he's not in the lineup today, because they're going to be thinking $18.5 million. If he plays well, we could re-sign him for 12, maybe.
Right. Yeah, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they DFA'd him. I mean, he's a different situation since he's been a lifelong Cardinal. But I mean, we've let go of Brett Cecil, who had high money. We're eating most
Greg Holland
contract.
They did it with Holland. They did it with Peralta his last year. Johnny Peralta.
Luke Gregerson even.
That's the only reason I was even posing that question, because I got to thinking to myself, $18.5 million is a lot of money. He does have no trade clause, but what if he's just tanking and it's June, July, and we need that roster spot? Would the Cardinals maybe think about, with the history and the possibility of upsetting some fans, would they do that, or are they just going to hang on to him and let him sit there? I don't know.
I think if he continues to struggle like this, I think the only reason why you keep him on the team is, like Hayden said, kind of that veteran presence for the young guys to kind of look up to.
Yeah. Well, that's all I had. Chris, are you wrapped up on your end for?
Yeah, I'm good. I'd like to plug these guys and let them kind of tell everybody where we can find them on social media and what projects they've got in store. So if you guys want to go around and tell everybody all the avenues and places they can find you on social media, go ahead.
Hayden, go ahead.
So I'm on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook with STL Sports Central, and then on Twitter it's STL Sports CNTRL. And right now I'm working on starting a new YouTube series, probably trying out something new that I think a lot of people will like. But that's the main thing I'm working on. Maybe a podcast, but that's a lot further in the works.
Yeah, you do all that stuff yourself, or is it a group of you guys? Just you,
just
man.
me.
You put out a lot of content. You do some nice stuff. Something you put a lot of time and effort. So
yeah,
it shows, though, man.
I'm such a perfectionist. I can't let anyone else do it. I wish I could.
That's a lot of stuff. You do a great job, man, putting out stuff. So I enjoy checking it out.
Appreciate it.
And what about you, Brad?
Arch City Media, Facebook, Twitter. You can find myself on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Twitter's at Brad Kehl. And then for Arch City Media, it's just at Arch City Media. I'm currently in the middle of my 30-team preview for the month of March, previewing all 30 teams in the major leagues. If I remember right, I will be previewing the Cardinals on the 18th, so the day after St. Patrick's Day, so that will be St. Louis's Day. And then at the very end of the month, on the 31st, I'll do my entire predictions for the 2021 season, and it's kind of what I'm looking forward to here. So
nice. That's a lot of work too, man. Compiling information. I know I got to do the Reds on our podcast this week, and I'm dreading having to do research for one team, let alone 29 others.
So far for the Central, I've only done the Pirates, and that was rough.
What did you do? Pick the easiest story you could first, or what? Trying to get it done.
I'm actually going by draft order.
Yeah, I was gonna say the Pirates. Maybe you could do wait till you have to put out a story and your deadline. You don't have anything. You're like, Pirates will not be very good.
Yeah.
Next story. No, I'm just kidding. I think I still like watching us play the Pirates just because of the fact they always have these young guys that come out of nowhere and end up on another team and do well. It seems like, and I think the teams are going to be a little better than everyone figures in the Central. I think the Brewers are a pretty big sleeper. I know a lot of people were shocked when they were ranked higher than the Cardinals, which I don't think they're better than the Cardinals, but I think the Brewers do have a little bit of a sleeper team this year. They do. Like Woodruff. I'm a big Woodruff fan. I pick him up in fantasy every year if I get the chance. Devin Williams, I do like him. He was a little shaky last time. They got Hader. They got Colton Wong only solidifies the defense on the team, and I can't remember the guy that's taken over at first. He was their second baseman. He's the Asian guy. I don't want to be.
Kelton Hura.
Yep, that's him. Yep, and they've done a lot. And Yelich, I look for Yelich to have a huge bounce back season. Excuse me.
Yeah.
And Travis Shaw seems to always do well against the Cardinals and hit home runs. They just got guys out there that you don't normally hear about, but always just seem to do well against us. And same way with the Reds.
And I think one thing that kind of hurt the Cardinals last year with the lack of offensive production was MLB said that you couldn't have in-game video in the dugout because of the whole Astros and Red Sox scandal going on. That's back this year, so I think you could see a guy like Paul DeJong have a bigger season this year. Yeah,
I agree. It's gonna be a fun season. It'll be here before we know it. It starts up in 3 weeks. So thanks again to everybody. Thanks again to our guests and joining us. Hopefully we have you guys back on soon. JP Maxwell from Midmo Sports Show, 107.3 FM out of Rolla, Missouri on ESPN Radio. Brad Kehl from Art City Media, and Mr. Hayden See, the founder of STL SportsCentral. Please check them out. They do some great work, have some interesting stuff. So please follow, like, subscribe to those guys, and keep checking in with us here. Chris at Cardinal Cuts doing his own thing. I have Redbirds with Red Wine, and then our weekly Cardinals Nation 24/7 podcast that we try to put out by every Thursday because we have to do a lot of editing. Other than that, I think we're all it. So I'll leave you. You can take us out there, Chris.
I just appreciate everybody that has tuned in and that tuned in live tonight. I appreciate all of our guests, Brad, Hayden, and JP. Really appreciate their interaction in the Facebook group and sharing their stuff out. And hopefully it gets more attention when you share it to the group, that puts more eyes on your work. So we appreciate all that you guys do and for being good members of the group and for hopping on with us tonight. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Yep. Thanks. All right. Everybody go